Hello everyone, welcome back to Croc Creek Brewery. Thank you for joining me today. I know I probably look a bit different. I've had my first haircut in the last 6 months. During all this craziness, I never had my hair cut. So now I look nice and clean shaven. Not really clean shaven, but you know what I mean. So anyway, today we are going to be checking and bottling our lemon hard seltzer. It has been sitting for a week under the fruit. It has imparted the hint of lemon that we wanted. What we're going to do is gonna go ahead and check it with our hydrometer, make sure that it is done fermenting, and then we're going to rack it off into bottles and add priming sugar. So let's go ahead and get started and see how we're doing. I have my turkey baster here. We're going to use this to draw out just enough liquid to fill our graduated cylinder. Again, this is going to be a low alcohol beverage, close to a cider in alcohol content. It should be about 6% alcohol, and is going to be sparkling here in about a week when it's done carbonating. Here we go. We have our hydrometer right here. Very nice. Okay. We are at 0.996 specific gravity. So it is dry as it could be. We are below the zero sugar level, which is 1.000. That is the specific gravity of water. So we have less sugar in it than water does. What we're going to do now is actually rack it into a carboy, a glass carboy, and we're going to degas it and add our priming sugar before we rack it into these. So let me get my glass carboy. It's being sanitized right now. I'll see you in just a sec. We have our 1 gallon carboy that has been cleaned and sanitized. You can see there's still a few bubbles in there. Don't worry about that. It's not going to cause anything to happen in your wine. It's totally safe. So we're going to put it down here on the ladder. We're going to go ahead and pour in the liquid from our graduated cylinder very, very carefully. Let it kind of bounce off the side of your carboy, just like that. Don't just pour it, dump it right in. That could cause oxidation into your wine or whatever it is you're making. Let me go ahead and move the camera down so you can see what I'm doing. Sorry about that, that was a little bumpy. Here we go. We have our carboy. We have our carboy full of wine, or in this case, hard seltzer. Carefully insert your auto siphon and get it started. And there we have it. We are siphoning away. We're going to go ahead and let this fill up, and then we're going to do a quick degas. Now this has been sitting for a week in secondary fermentation or clarification, and it was sitting a week and a half before that in primary. I don't think there's a lot of gas left in it. This is only about 6% alcohol. There shouldn't be much carbon dioxide or nitrogen left in this, but we will give it a quick degassing just to make sure before we add our priming sugar. So in the process of this racking into the carboy, we're going to go ahead and get our priming sugar ready. You'll see me back in just a second, and I'll give you the exact ingredients and measurements of how much sugar we're going to use. We'll see you in just a sec. Okay, so we're back. we have gone ahead and racked off our hard seltzer into our glass carboy. You can see we have just above the 1 gallon marker, which is exactly where I hoped we would be when I measured this out. Let's go ahead and drain off our siphoning tube. And we're going to put this aside to use when we bottle it.
Hello.
There we go. It's kind of tricky when you have a bottling wand. There we go. Okay, let's set this aside. We're going to use it again when it comes time to bottle. Now right here we have our priming sugar. This is regular old white sugar. It came from my local grocery store. This is HEB brand white sugar. Here we go. Had a problem with the focusing. This is regular old granulated sugar. You can buy specialized priming sugar used especially for beer making. I don't see the need for it, so I don't use it. This is extremely cheap. It works really well for beers, for sparkling ciders, for sparkling wines. I use it all the time. We're going to go ahead and pour this in, and we'll move on to the next step. I don't think I told you how much sugar that was. Sorry about that. That is 2 ounces of sugar by weight. 2 ounces of sugar by weight per gallon of liquid. So if I was making beer, I'd put 2 ounces into a 1 gallon bucket and fill it with 1 gallon of beer. Same for any other recipe I make. 2 ounces by weight per gallon of liquid. Any more than that, and you are risking making a bottle bomb and having an explosion in your cabinet or your closet, wherever it is you keep your brews. I have here my stir stick. We're going to use this to mix in the sugar. We are not going to shake it. If you shake it at this point, you could introduce more oxygen, which could cause your brew to turn to vinegar. That is not what we want to happen today. And we're going to stir it in the same direction. We're never going to cross back over and go counterclockwise. We're going to keep stirring it clockwise until all of the sugar is dissolved. We'll probably do this a couple times. We'll wait, let it sit and settle down, see if there's any sugar settling to the bottom, because we want this to be entirely dissolved. Okay. If it's not entirely dissolved, you could risk having one bottle that has more sugar in it than the others. So one may be carbonated and the other not. One could be an explosion. The other could be a still wine, or a still seltzer in this case. You want to mix this up really good. Try not to add any oxygen to it. This is also going to serve as a degassing for this brew. So this will get out any carbon dioxide, any nitrogen, anything that could add off flavors into your seltzer. Mix it up really, really well. We do not want to risk a bottle explosion, because those can get very, very messy and very, very dangerous. I've opened up several bottles of my homemade beer that I didn't mix properly, or I added too much priming sugar, and the bottles shattered in my hand and sent glass flying everywhere, including into my face. So this is the process, or this is the part of the process where you want to be extremely thorough in your work.
Mine's downloading.
Okay,
You sound very
so we're going to let that sit for a second. We're going to see if any sugar settles to the bottom. The leftover lemons are going to go into my compost. Those provide wonderful nutrients to the soil. and I use that soil when it comes time for gardening. Don't forget to save your label. You're going to need that original gravity to measure your ABV. Everything I've been using so far has been sanitized. All my bottles were sanitized after I finished using them on the last brew, and they've been re-sanitized this morning, starting with this hard seltzer. I sanitize everything twice. Whenever I'm done brewing for the day, any tools I use, my auto siphon, my turkey baster, everything gets sanitized before I use it and after I use it. That way I risk no bacteria infections in my brews. I have never once had an issue with bacterial infections. The only time I've ever had a brew turn to vinegar was during this bottling process. I took a long time bottling, and that day, for whatever reason, there were a lot of fruit flies in my house, and some of them got into my bottles. So some of my bottles turned out wonderful, some of my bottles turned to vinegar. But I've never had any issues with bacterial infections or vinegar, my brews turning to vinegar on the large scale. So right now I see a little bit of granulated sugar on the bottom of this carboy. Let's go ahead and keep stirring it. We're going to do this until we're absolutely sure there is no sugar left in suspension. I'm really excited about this hard seltzer. I think it's going to taste really, really good. Like I said in our tutorial of how to make it, everyone's been making hard seltzer lately. Companies like Bud Light, Corona, new companies like Truly, White Claw. There are tons of hard seltzers out there on the market, and they're really, really easy to make. There's not a lot of ingredients involved, but there are a lot of steps involved. The extra steps, such as measuring out your ABV, adding the fruit into secondary instead of primary, and adding priming sugar. Those are the extra steps as opposed to regular homemade winemaking. But as you practice and do this more often, it becomes sort of natural. If you know you're going to use priming sugar, you already have it measured out. If you know you're going to add fruit to secondary, you just don't think about it. These steps and these processes will become more natural. They'll become easier to do, easier to think about the more you do it. Practice makes perfect. I've been making carbonated lemon lime wine for the past 6 months. And they have turned out remarkably good, especially on a warm, sunny day where it's hot outside. There's nothing better than sparkling lemon lime wine. And so that has helped me prepare for making this hard seltzer. I just added a couple more steps to it. Okay, let's let that sit for one more time. Make sure we don't have any sugar settling to the bottom. So we're going to sit here for a second, enjoy a little bit of beer.
I don't either.
Most of these bottles I use are actually recycled bottles. A lot of the bottles I use for my meads are leftover gin bottles, whiskey bottles, things like that. This is actually a reused beer bottle. I bought a 6-pack of Grolsch, which I believe is beer from the Netherlands. It was a really, really good light beer. I really enjoyed it, but I bought it mainly because it had swing top bottles, and I could reuse those for the seltzer. I have bought these before. These were bought off of Amazon. 1 pint swing top bottles. very inexpensive. They hold up to carbonation very nicely. These were also bought off of Amazon when I first started homebrewing about 1.5 years ago. Very cheap. I think I bought 12 of these for 10 bucks on Amazon. Only problem I've run into is when you use these for carbonated beverages, this lip here can cause your beverages to explode when you open them because the swing top comes up and hits that lip and it'll shatter the bottle. So I usually don't use these for carbonated beverages. When I do, I keep them over the sink. I open them very slowly, very carefully. I only have a few left, and I have a lot of beverages currently aging in the bottles, so I don't have a lot of excess bottles. Okay, I see a little bit of sugar, not much. Let's keep stirring that. The fruit did add more color than I thought it would to this hard seltzer. It is a very light yellow, as you can see. I'm curious to see how it clarifies in the bottle and if it turns more clear, more water-like. I have had that happen with my lemon lime wine. It looks very yellow in the carboy, and after a week or two in the bottle, it much more closely resembles water. Okay, I believe all of our sugar is dissolved. I don't see any of it settling to the bottom. So we are going to go ahead and rack this into our bottles. Let me grab our auto siphon. Here we go. That end goes in there. This end goes into our bottles. Let's get it going. All right, let me move the camera down for you guys so you can see what we're doing. Here we go. As the level goes down on our seltzer, I may move some of these bottles down here, closer to the ground, so that they move faster, the liquid siphons easier. There we go. I'm filling it up right about 1 inch below the top of these bottles. Right to there. So I won't bore you as we go through the rest of these bottles. That's a lot of bottles to fill. So I'm going to go ahead and fast forward through this part and you'll see me on the other side. Hey everyone. So we are done racking it into our bottles. You can see here we have exactly 7 bottles filled up with our beautiful lemon hard seltzer. So these are going to sit here and carbonate with that priming sugar, which will be a miniature fermentation. The yeast will continue to eat through the rest of that sugar for about 3 to 4 days, and then these will be ready to drink. I'm probably going to, after 3 or 4 days, put them in the fridge, and it won't be necessarily a cold crash, but it will be. They'll be basically chilled when I enjoy drinking them. So I did the math on the ABV, and these turned out to be exactly 6% alcohol. So these are very low ABV beverage. They're closer to a cider or to a beer than they are homemade wine. But this was such a fun experiment to do. I'm so pleased at how it turned out, and I'm very excited to try it here in a few days when these are done carbonating. I do have just a little bit left over from my bottling, so we're gonna go ahead and taste this and see how it turned out, see how much lemon we got out of the fruit. Just a perfect amount. Just a hint of lemon. So, we'll do a tasting video in about a week whenever these are done carbonating, and I hope to see you then on that video. Thank you for joining me here on this process as we made lemon hard seltzer. This was a totally new experiment for me, but we followed the basic principles of homemade winemaking, and it was super easy and super cheap. So, we hope to see you on the next video here at Croc Creek Brewery. Y'all take care now. Bye.